is almost 9:30. I'm going to give a moment and see if anyone pops in. As you can probably still hear from my voice, I am not completely over what I've been dealing with. Getting there, but some days are more rough than others, and with the weather that has been sliding through the last 2 days, it's been rougher for me. Hi, Ashley. So being sick has its, I guess, its pros and cons. One of the things is I sit and ingest a lot of material because I'm stuck. So I read, I listen to a lot of news, I watch a lot of documentaries. The other part of it stinks because I'm stuck. I am doing better, but with the rain and stuff that came through, I've had like a little back set. So, hi Pocahontas, hi Priscilla, hi Denise. So what I've been handling with is basically my autoimmune issue got so low because I got so sick and I had so much going on at one time that it released all those little proteins meant to be like a last ditch effort for people with autoimmune disorders and like people with cancer that are having chemo and their immune systems get so suppressed. Um, and instead of knowing what to attack and attacking just the bad stuff, it attacks the good and the bad. And so that's what's been going on. It took us a little while to figure it out, but once we figured it out, we made some adjustments and things have been going better. And I was actually doing pretty good. There for 2 or 3 days, I did really, really well. I overdid it once, kind of had to chill out for a day or two, and then was doing really well. And then this stupid weather came through, and that really messes with me. Hi, Nip. Hey, Gypsy. We got Cindy in here too. Um, but one of the big things about when I'm down, because they banished me to bed rest when I'm this bad, is that I think a lot. And so, just so happens that the last little bit, and I posted this in the community pages of something I wanted to talk about, was okay, we are starting to see a lot of people talking about this Dylan Mulvaney. Was that the right name? Oh no, there is a actor that has a very similar name. I keep thinking I'm calling him the wrong name. Anyway, the young man that is doing the Days of Girlhood, which I think is questionable at best, and the way he talks about it portrays. I mean, let's be honest, people. It's all portrayal. There is not one natural action that is taking place from this young man. It's all portrayal. If he could, go and be a Disney princess in the theater, that would be a perfect match for him. It's all portrayal. I'm not trying to knock him in any way. I'm just saying, let's we need to be honest about what our intentions are in this society because we're screwing each other over right now, royally. And here's how we're screwing each other over. And so this is just something I want to talk about for a minute as I have the energy. And what you said, you mean the actor who's pretending? Yes, I think he was actually on. He was like on Broadway before. Um, yes, he's on like TikTok. Well, the other day he said something, and I've been kind of getting caught up on all this stuff about him, and he said that he thought it should be illegal for people to misgender him, and I thought, okay, touche. Let me come back at you. So if in 10 years, okay, he has went after several people that have misgendered him, caused them to catch a charge, caused them to have any kind of, because who knows what they'll turn this into, whether it be a misdemeanor or a criminal offense, what they'll turn it into, who knows. Causes them to catch a charge. Let's say it ends up being a felony. Let's say they end up doing some time before they're put on, released to do community service, or if they're not eligible for community service and they've got another consecutive charge to handle after that. So obviously, there's going to be like time away from their family, possible loss of employment, jail time, lawyer costs, all this stuff is going to be tangled into this most likely. What if that person then detransitions? Because we're seeing like, what is it, like a 70 something percent detransition rate. And this is where my head goes because I'm retired probation and parole. So if we're looking at making this a legal infraction to misgender people, which some countries are, and the U.S. seems to be going in that way, then what happens when they detransition? Because upon finding of new evidence, which detransitioning would be new evidence, be a new finding, then anyone within that case, upon finding of new evidence, can go back and open that case back up for review or request a I'm losing my words because that's how I feel, um, a conviction relief hearing. So what if these people send people to jail or send people and get charges and they have to stay in jail until they plea out or they go to trial? Or what if all this occurs and then they do transition 10 to 15 years later? Then can the person that had to go to jail spend time in jail, lost wages, lost possibly their employment, lost their job, could have taken their family, vested the family, um, and took a portion of their life while they were in custody, can this person then sue them for filing a false report? Because if they transitioned and said, and then detransitioned said, oh, no, 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 none of that was real, I never should have done that. Well, then that would have been filing a false charge if you cited somebody for misgendering you, but then you detransitioned. That would be filing a false charge. And then if that person was stuck in jail, could they then sue, go back and charge you with false imprisonment? And get all of that. I mean, and it would have to go through several layers of court. Some of it would go through criminal, misdemeanor criminal court, and some of it would have to go through civil court because they would have to recoup all of their lawyer fees, all of any kind of emotional harm and financial harm that they could prove, and then they would have to recoup legally, what they needed to charge to recoup there. So that would be filing a false report, misuse of the judicial system, and false imprisonment based on just someone who woke up on a whim one day and said, no, I'm a woman. And then 10 years later said, no, wait, I'm a man. And I was never a woman. That was a mistake. Now I'm a man. So if they detransition, can you go back? If we make this law, can we go back and hold them accountable? Because it's already happening in Canada. I mean, it's already happening in Canada. And to me, it's like misgendering is like, now I'm sorry, if I wear a ball cap and walk away from you, I'm so broad shouldered and big, you're going to think I'm a big burly man walking away from you. Do I have a problem if you say, hey, sir? No, because I know exactly what it'll look like. And if I put on a flannel shirt and a ball cap, I know most people, when I'm walking away, they're going to think, there goes a big burly man. I have no problem with that. If I want people to really notice that I'm a girl, I'm probably not going to wear a flannel shirt, jeans, and boots, and a ball cap. But there are times when I'm on the farm or doing something that I need to. I don't want to dirty up nice clothes. So, does it bother me? No. When I was an officer, I got called sir all the time. Did it hurt my feelings? Absolutely not. I know a lot of it is just, and how people initially respond. I don't think it's anything that should become part of our legal system, because you would have to, our legal system really goes for crimes that have victims that are hurt beyond just their feelings. We've got to get over our feelings being hurt in this nation. It's stupid. I'm trying to read some of the comments. My eyes are fuzzy where I've been sick for a few days. Cindy, I heard that when COVID hit and the theater shut down, that's when he came up with this scheme. Now I don't know if he's had any kind of idea about this before, but I will say from the behavior that I see from him, I see just portrayal. I see absolutely no authentic movement, no authentic communication, no authentic body language, no nonverbals that are not absolute portrayal based. And that's from someone that was trained to watch people. And so that concerns me greatly. That concerns me greatly because I'm sitting here going, okay, is this person truly just trying to make a lot of money, or is this person living in some kind of subtext area to where they are in this fantasy land 24/7? And my God, I mean, we're giving a man Tampax commercials and makeup commercials, and he's making enough money to live in this, to show off his house with all these bath bombs and to have this facial feminization surgery. But we're the women, just us regular women out here rolling, we're getting nothing and getting beat up pretty bad right now because you can't even identify what a woman is. So here's my thing: if you can't identify what a woman is, then how can you identify what a man is? Because you have to know what one is before you can know what the other is. So how can you flip and misgender anybody if it's open to interpretation? I'm just trying to find the root of all of this. I get to thinking about this, and I'm like, ever since that one guy told me, I had the conversation with the one young gentleman that said that he thought people should go to jail for misgendering, and that basically it should extend to the entire animal kingdom. We should respect all animals and how they want to portray themselves. And I'm sitting there going, how do you know if a bull thinks it's a heifer? How do you? This is just like, this is not. You don't understand. This is not how the animal kingdom works. And the one thing that he had studied was that, but they run in bachelor groups. Well, every animal does run in bachelor groups until the young men are kicked out of the herd because they become eligible to, able to breed. Then they get booted out of the herd by the alpha male. And then it's like, hey, it was nice to babysit you and train you. Now go find your own women. Go find your own herd. Um, they do show dominance by portraying certain acts. Animals do, but that's because they don't have other ways to show dominance. I mean, they're animals. Um, but given a heat cycle for the females, and every male will go after a female, so it's not like they deny themselves and only go after the bachelor groups. Like, I was trying to explain this to him, and he said, well, there's nowhere that we should not allow these things to express themselves. And I was like, we're going to start seeing a lot of court issues over stuff like this if we try to stretch it for the animal kingdom. And he was like, no, I don't think so. No. Because I was saying there's going to be a lot of people come against these people, saying that, you lied and did not tell me the true nature of the animal I purchased. And he was like, no. Because I told him that livestock barns were never going to be a place that you could ever try to interpret the gender of anything. And he was like, oh, yes, you can. You can go with how the animal acts and feels. And I'm sitting there going, dude, you can't know. I mean, if you watch mares and geldings and studs, they all have certain behaviors. And a mare is half the time more hateful than a stud, but a stud is more dangerous than a mare. And that's why a lot of people like to ride geldings, because geldings are just, bless their hearts, they've been snipped, and they're just docile creatures. But I said, you can't go to a livestock barn and sell a steer, but say it identifies as a bull. Well, why can't you? I said, because that doesn't work, because someone there to buy a bull is there to buy a bull for breeding program, because you have to cycle through bulls as your heifers grow, and you cull certain heifers and you keep others. I said, you have to cycle through your bulls so that you're not breeding back, and you're not doubling back on your genetics, so that you keep healthy heard. And he didn't, of course, he didn't understand any of that. I said, so you can't sell a bull that you, or a steer that you identify as a bull. You have to sell it as a steer. And he said, but if I identified it as a bull and I thought it was a bull, then I would sell it as a bull. And I said, well, if you do, and the guy in the back row can't see that it's not a bull and bids on it and pays, thousands of dollars for this, what should be a bull, loads it up, gets it in his trailer and looks and sees that it's a steer, I said, he's going to come back with some serious charges on you because that's fraudulent. And he said, why? I said, because he didn't want to buy a steer, he wanted to buy a bull. And he said, well, he should be happy to buy a steer. They're more docile and easier to handle. I said, yes, because they've been snapped. And he said, I don't understand. I'm not following you. I said, steers cannot reproduce. And if he wanted a bull, he wanted a bull for his reproduction program, his breeding program with his farm. And he said, I am not following what you're saying. I said, steers cannot reproduce. He was like, oh, yes, they can. I said, no, they can't. That's why they're so docile. And he had no idea that most mules were sterile, because he had no idea about that. And I opened his brain to a lot of things that day, but there were a lot of things that he didn't understand. And I think since mules became a big thing and started being registered and like the lineage maintained, I think there's only been 60 or 62 births from a mule, because most of the time mules are sterile. The crossover makes a sterile animal. And he could not understand that. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you are telling me that I don't understand the biology. But it's obvious that the biology that I understand, you have no grasp on. You don't even know that steers can't reproduce. It just blew my mind. So it got me thinking when I saw the clip of the Dylan guy be like, I think it should be illegal to misgender me. Okay, well then if you detransition and you've caused somebody, years of their life, lawyer costs, emotional harm and financial repercussions, and you falsified a claim, because you were fraudulent back then, because if you detransitioned, then that was fake. And you cause somebody to go to jail, which would be false imprisonment, well, you're going to suffer at least 2 felonies there. Not to mention what you're going to owe the state for prosecuting for you if they take up your misgender lawsuit. So how are we going to do this? My question is, how are we going to do this? If Canada's already doing this, how are we going to do this when 70% are detransitioning? How are we going to do this? It is crazy, Annette. It is absolutely crazy. Yeah, Annette, you could get really creative with some of the charges that you could come back on them with for all the damage caused to your life. And because that would mean, if they detransition, that would mean that all of that was portrayal, all of that was a mistake, all of that was false, all of that was not authentic. It was an experience that they dedicated and tried, but it was not the truth, and so they detransitioned back to their truth. And so upon detransition, that would be new evidence for the court, and somebody would be able to go back and say, well, I didn't misgender him then, because look, what I said was true. So I'm just wondering how this is going to happen, because we're putting an awful lot of pressure on people to make the exceptions the rule. And it's like we're a nation of law and order, but we never make exceptions the rule. Now, we might create small little ordinances or small little statutes to help protect certain people, but we never go out and make, the exceptions the rule. And that's what we're seeing in this country. We're starting to see where the law of the land does not portray the bulk of the citizenship anymore. And so the citizens are getting mad. And we basically have no way to express ourselves. And if we express ourselves, they say it's negative, nasty, or misgendering. But that's my valid question. What happens if you cause somebody a lot of pain, torture, and possible jail time, and then you detransition a few years later? That basically says what I was doing was false. This is actually who I really am. So therefore, that person did not misgender you, and you owe that person a lot because you took away from their life because you were in a portrayal time and it was non-authentic, but you held somebody else, you know, to the fire because of your confusion. What other, I mean, how is our judicial system going to work if this is the way we're going? You know, I mean, I might as well stand up and say I'm a water buffalo. It's about what I look like on a good day. But I mean, and then dare anybody to tell me I'm not, you know. It's so strange that we're getting kids that are living more in like a metaverse within their head rather than functioning within reality. So they've got all these other places to express themselves where there are no consequences. There's no recompense to others when you hurt them. There's only their world, how they feel, how they treat people, and how they respond when people treat them. But there's no consequences. There's no social contract. There's there's nothing that comes back at them when they make a bad mistake. So how are we supposed to train these kids when they're being raised in this metaverse, but also it's creating this metaverse within their head? So in their head, instead of structuring a formal life and thinking about lifelong, how am I going to do this with my life? What am I going to do? How am I going to deal with this problem? How am I going to pay for college? How am I going to get a job to deal with this? They're thinking of other things, such as, do I want to be a dog today? Do I want to be a cat today? Do I want to shock and awe people with, rainbow color hair and change through my nose? We're spending an awful lot of our time as human beings on fluff. And so we're seeing an awful lot of our laws, rules, and social structure go to, and financial endeavors within society go to fluff. So that's why we're seeing the downfall of cities, the downfall of buildings, the downfall of society in general. But we're seeing rundown areas. We're putting all of our money into these fictitious things that do not build a society. It simply confuses a society and puts it into a whirlwind. And I'm just sitting here going, okay, but you better, if you want to take somebody to jail for misgendering you, if you ever detransition, you know that you open the door for somebody to come back and take you to court, take you all the way to court, and it will be just as painful for you as it was for them. So that's I've been thinking about that for like a week and a half now. I identify as queen of everything. Okay, the Nova Rockefeller. If you have little ones in the room, put your earbuds in. You know the Nova Rockefeller song, My Yard. What is it? Is it My Yard? She starts out, she goes, I'm Queen Elizabeth and everywhere's my castle. So when I'm in a mood, that's what David will look at me and I'm like, no, I'm Queen Elizabeth. So, I mean, we all have our days where we need to feel special, but do you really need to put on 15 pounds of makeup, mystically change your gender and have, millions of people support that, fictitious? I mean, it's just, what happened to like Carol Burnett and Rowan Martin's Laughing, and where you could do these things, express yourself, have a laugh, but we all knew that it was what it was. It was portrayal. And there were very few, like I've told you all before, if you would look at the research and the stats on this, about 3% of the population that do this are going to benefit from transitioning and living as the other gender. About 3%. That means that the other 97% of the people that are doing this are doing it for other means, like attention seeking or deflection, distraction from other issues, maladjustment periods where they think this is going to fix it, and they're not seeing the right therapist. Any therapist should, it should be almost a 2-year period to go through. It should be almost a 6-month period before they think about even giving you testosterone, and close to a 2-year period before they recommend you for any kind of true medical procedure, because they would have to rule out any other diagnosis so that they could proceed and say, okay, this is a viable issue. This is the root cause. And you're not seeing that. You're seeing them within weeks being put on hormone blockers and then having hormone replacement therapy. And it's very, we have in effect basically sterilized the majority of our upcoming generations. And we've done it out of stupidity, and we've done it out of self gratification, and we've done it out of needing to be the star of our own show, rather than understanding that sometimes some of us are just damn good supporting actors. I mean, not everybody can be a star. You know, I'm like a be real, awesome supporting actor, and I'm okay with that. Because I don't always have the best ideas, and I don't always have the best leadership. Someone's always better than me. So I'm like, I'm back there. I'm the be real, supporting actor. And that's okay. That's my place. But everybody today wants to be the star, and we all can't do that. And so it's like, who can lie the most, who can confuse the most, who can be intriguing the most, so that we can get this attention. And sadly, attention in our society is now gotten through shock and awe. Shock and awe, which is turned into stunning and brave. And stunning and brave is turned into deplorable and what is it? Some kind of supremacy mode. And it's just like, how did we get here? How did we get here? Was it boredom? Was it caring too much? Was it having too soft of hearts? Um, was it thinking that expression could break down into purely a cerebral, you know, mystic function that doesn't portray physically? It just portrays in our brain, and because we see it, everyone else should say, okay, they see it. Well, okay, well then I see that I make a $1.8 million annual income, and by golly, you better see it too. If we're gonna go that way, I mean, doggone it, let's do something that is worthwhile. Um, but what happened? What happened to like the old vaudeville shows and the where people used to do these little roles and stuff like that? Is that what this is transitioned into? Is that like when people used to dress up and act like the other gender and put on the performances? I mean, they were great actors. They were funny. They were endearing. The public loved them, but they knew who they really were. But is that perhaps, because we don't have those anymore? Is that perhaps what this genre has now turned into? And then it's blown up because of the hysteria around it, and the profiteering that goes with it now. I've wondered this for a while. It's been on my heart and mind for quite a while. Cindy B says they couldn't work these days. Remember Flip Wilson? Oh gosh, why do I remember that name? Yes, I remember the name. Oh crap. Country Christian, you really made my day. Well, I knew everybody's been missing me. I've just been so sick and weak, and I had a few good days and overdid it, and then I got back to doing pretty good, and this weather really just got me. And the sad thing is the infection and the issues I'm still battling are in the left side of my pelvis and my left hip. It's not my whole pelvis anymore. It's the left side of my left hip. And so I still got infection in the bone and my pelvis and my hip socket. And David's got a huge fur sale Saturday that is about 35 minutes away. And he's been begging me for weeks, please get better so you can go with me. Please get better so you can, because he now has his fur buyer's license. And he's like, please be better so you can go with me. And I really want to go, but I'm like, I don't know. My physical therapist is supposed to drop by tomorrow and see if she thinks that I can handle the car ride. And the walking is not that bad for me. The walking really doesn't hurt. It's when I have to find somewhere to sit down. Of course, I can take my rolly cart and sit on it. But it's the car ride that is really the most painful. And I don't want to re-aggravate the bone or re-inflame the infection, because then my body sends out more of those little stupid proteins and they attack everything. So instead of attacking just what's wrong, they attack everything, organs and all. And the more times that my body sends these out, the worse it attacks the good things, and it can be fatal. It's called a cytokine storm if you all want to read about it. Cytokine release syndrome. I have learned some of the weirdest medical terminology and issues just because my body does not function correctly. And I learn stuff and I'm like, oh, so I'm overproducing little proteins that are supposed to save my life. But they're so stupid, they can't just only attack the infection, they attack the good bone, and the healthy organs too. Oh, gee. My army is special needs. Literally, when I release my soldiers in my body to help me, it basically turns into the Special Olympics. And I know for some of y'all gonna be, that's so rude, but that's the way I look at it. And it's, bless their hearts, they're trying, but they just can't quite get it right. And I'm just sitting here going, hey, body, can we get it together just for a little while, please? I would love to feel better. Oh, here comes the judge. Here comes the judge. I used to do that to my criminal judge when, like, the courtroom was basically empty. And I would stand there, and he would have to walk behind the clerk that was on the podium next to him and crawl up there. And I'd stand there and I'd go, here comes the judge. Here comes the... He got so irritated with me. But he adored me, but I irritated that man to death. He was such a good man. I really have thought about this though. I thought, because our judicial system right now, a speedy trial, if you want to go to a jury of your peers, is 10 months to 2 years. So if we start now congesting our justice system with how many of these misgendering issues, if it doesn't play out, if people want to say, by God, no, I'm going to trial over this crap, depending on how they layer it, whether they make it a misdemeanor or if it can be a felony if it amplifies to a certain degree, and these people want to wait and go to a trial, they could potentially be in custody for up to 2 years, depending on how backlogged their court system is. That's not fair, especially when this is just, there's no way to determine if it is a factual thing that's not going to reverse. Even if they have surgeries done to present as the other gender, they still can detransition and, bless their heart, just have to deal with the patchwork quilt they created with their body. So, are we going to start to allow laws on the books that can affect people's lives because of, a idea that resides solely within someone's head that nobody can validate, verify, or in any way determine to be true or false? How do we do this? Because psychologists can't do this. They are just affirming the person's belief, which boggles my mind, because I was never taught to affirm an anorexic or anyone that was schizophrenic or bipolar. I was never taught to affirm anything they believed, because most of what they believed was harmful to them. But you're supposed to affirm this group, but then they're wanting to augment and go under the blade and potentially put their life on the line. But the thing is, we're letting the bulk of these people do that, instead of these therapists and psychologists looking at these people and sifting through them to find that valid 3% normally that are intersexed or hermaphroditic, have other issues from birth, and they're forced to make a surgical choice. We're just allowing everyone to do it. And how did we get here? How did we get here? And there is no way that any nature, there's no way that there's any functioning animal, mammal, reptile in nature, where they all choose to change genders yet fail to reproduce, can survive. Now, there are certain reptiles that can change their genders. Sometimes a hen that stops laying will turn into a rooster. Y'all ever seen that? That happens. It's one of those things, those weird things that happen. But in nature, it gets it right, and that they have both compatibility, to turn into what they need to turn into to keep reproducing. We don't. We don't. So justification biologically when we're looking at the animal kingdom, on. No, we don't get any justification from that. So yeah, I'm just concerned. All in the Family would be banned. I was watching that the other day. If you haven't seen the app, and it's free, called Freebie, it's like a lot of the old classics from Amazon. It's free. Um, Download it. It's completely free. You can watch so many things on it. I've been watching all the old classics. Like I'm on season 5 of The Waltons, y'all. That's how sick I've been. I watched the whole season of Hawkeye with Linda Carter and that Lee Horsley, and I called out every false thing that they did. But then what really ticked me off is I really enjoyed Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. I really enjoyed it until the last episode. In the last episode, I got so mad I could spit because what's his name? Sully is sitting at the fire, rubbing the hairy side of a deer pelt with a dry hand, and the guy's like, "What's in your hand?" He's like, "It's a mixture of liver, brains, and water." And I was like, "No, you don't. You don't put liver in there. Liver is just acidic and would eat it. You just use the brains and water." And he's like, "I'm tanning this deer hide," and he's rubbing on the hair side. He's like, "And I'm going to present this beautiful fur." And I was like, "No, no, no. If you touch the brain and the water to the hair side, it causes the hair to slip. That's why you only put it on one side, and you slip the hair and you keep the fur on one side." And he said he was making this beautiful fur for somebody, but I thought, if you were really touching the fur side, it would cause the hair to slip. Most people soak it, both sides in a bucket of the brain and water mixture, and just make a buckskin. And that way, it's hair free, and they use it. They stretch it to make chaps and breeches and sew clothes and stuff like that. But anyway, I got, and like he didn't even have a mess in his hands. So let me tell you what, when you mix up brains and water and you start slapping that stuff on, and you're trying to keep it on one side, it gets messy. And so just steaming. I was sick in bed and just steaming because I was like, that is so inaccurate. You could have done such a much better job, because so many people watch that show and they did so much to make certain things accurate. And they just completely blew through that. And I thought, oh, that made me so mad. Of course, that would be me. I am the Trapper Tanner's wife, so that would be me. I really wonder if they will create a recourse for people once, if the United States starts this crap that Canada's starting. But I have a really big problem. Like, okay, I was raised in my law enforcement career to where when we saw a man trying to peek into a women's restroom, he was given a peep and tom charge or some other charge, and or a few charges depending on what he was doing while he was looking, and read the riot act and put on the sex offender registry. But now, if that man says, "I think I'm a woman," whether he's made any changes to his body or not, he can walk buck naked through any YMCA women's changing area, and you have to let him. You have to let him be stunning and brave. Cracks me up. Or as I would say, scuzzy and weird. But he can walk through any women's changing area at the YMCA because he identifies as a woman, though no part of him says woman. And the women are just supposed to allow that. But if he said he didn't identify as a woman, and the only thing that changes is verbally words that he says, nothing else changes. If he was standing outside peeking in the window and said he didn't identify as a woman, he would be on the sex offender registry. And it's like, how have we gotten this far off track to where one sentence can change intent so much? How? How can one sentence change intent that much? It can't. You and I know that. And why they're not really putting these people through their paces and doing lie detector tests. I don't know why. I don't know why they're not doing that and treating them like they would any other sex offender and testing them for intent. Because if you don't know that, sex offenders have to have lie detector test, go through therapy, and every year have a re-up on their lie detector test, which asks them, have you reoffended anything that we've not known about in the last year? And we use lie detector tests annually with the sex offenders in my state. And and that's one thing I was fixing to start doing with the guy that does that because he was getting old. I was going to start doing lie detector. I was going to go through training to do the lie detector testing. And my disability just decided to take me out of the field, altogether. But it just makes you wonder why, why we will take some people at their word, but somebody that stole 21.50 out of the change bank at the laundromat gets reamed, and becomes a social outcast. But a man that walks naked through the women's locker room because he thinks he's a woman, it completely changes him being a peeping Tom. Now he's just another woman. Oscar's barking in his sleep. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but that is so funny. It behooves me, and I just don't know how judges are going to handle this. I have a problem with the compelled speech too, Cindy. I like to talk, but by golly, what comes out of my mouth has to be my thoughts and my words. And if you tell me I can't say something, I'm gonna skip down the road and say it. Well, I can't skip anymore. I'm gonna roll down the road and say it because that's just the way I am. If you tell me you may not do this, guess what I'm gonna do? And I'm not like trying to knock the people that truly benefit from transitioning, because there are, like I said, that 3% out there that do truly benefit from this because Mother Nature was not kind, something went wrong, and they normally have to have corrective surgeries, and they have to make a very big choice. And sometimes they even wait well into adulthood to make that choice because of the severity of the issues, and sometimes they need a lot of surgical intervention through their life. And I'm not knocking anyone, you know, but the thing that I am really sick of are the people that want to be a walking contradiction, confuse the heck out of you, and then just absolutely relish in the fact that they've got you confused and that they can bend you to their will and make you submissive to their form of punishment. And that really irritates me because I think a lot of people are doing this just to see what they can get away with. Just to see, like, what was it found in Canada? The big boob teacher. Y'all, y'all seen that guy that taught the wood shop that had the boobs worse than Dolly Parton, like 4 times as big as Dolly Parton. Number one, you don't work a compound miter saw when you got gazongas that big. That's a death threat waiting to happen right there. But they were fake. They were those fetish applique that you hang around your neck and wear. And so a lot of people were saying, you shouldn't be wearing those. And well, they found him outside of school not wearing them. Come to find out, he had spoken. This is the story now. Don't. This is the story that's coming out. Everybody go verify it for themselves because I'm still reading on it. Apparently, he was against all this woke ideology crap and was going to get fired. So he decided, I'll beat you at your own game, and came to school dressed as a woman and said, boom, I'm a woman. I identify as a woman. If you fire me, it will be basically your butt on the line. And so then they had to protect him because he became a protected class. And so now they've caught him out and about on the weekends not wearing his prosthetics, going, what? We thought you were female. So now he's back in hot water. So how are you going to handle that, Canada? You know, all the kids and all the parents that have come forward and been upset with that and been like, this is damaging to our children. How are you going to handle that if you come to find out it is all just a game? It was just all just a game to him because you were going to fire him, and he had to play right back at you to save his job and to save his career, his income. You thought it was a troll too. I'm like, man, well, good for him for laying it back at him because it should make everyone stop and think. Okay, so what is the true stats on who's doing this because they have a genetic predisposition issue that malformed their body to where they have to make a decision, or they have a true case of dysphoria, which, like I said, is a very low, like 3%, or the ones that are just doing this for shock and awe. Um, I have I have a really big issue with people that like to push themselves on other, like push their way of life on other people. I'm very forgiving and accepting as long as your life does not start to bleed into my life. Like I want you to be happy as long as your happiness does not come from me being unhappy. Like if you have to create someone else's unhappiness to be happy yourself, then your happiness is false as far as I'm concerned. And it's damaging. So your happiness should not cause someone else's unhappiness. And so when I see people that their happiness is causing someone else's unhappiness, I wonder what their motivation is, because no one that wants to be happy should ever want to see someone else unhappy, because happiness is something that we all strive for, and when we have it, we normally never want to wish unhappiness upon another person, because we're in a very good frame of mind where we're getting our serotonin, our dopamine, we got good chemical, you know, bromance going on in the head. We're doing great. And that normally means we want to see other people do well. So if you're truly happy, you're very rarely walking through life going, but I hate you, and I hate you, and I hate you, and I hate you. And how dare you say this to me? Where you're more forgiving. And so it's a contradiction to me to see somebody that's supposed to be so happy and so comfortable with themselves be so, able and willing to lash out at others and cause them harm, because those two things don't go together normally if you're in a place where you're happy. So it confuses the heck out of me, and I'm like, have we really got here? I mean, have we really got here? Can we just identify as anything? As anything? I mean, because give me about 5 good hours to think on this, and I will whip up some just major scheme, you know. But the pretend play and all that, even as an adult, doesn't bother me. But you need to go out into society and function. Now, if you want to go home and put on a mermaid suit and splash around in your tub and water damage your house till the cows come home, I don't care. But when you walk out that door, you should be able to acclimate within your society and be productive. And if you can't, if you are basically a disruption to your society, your social circle, your community, it needs to be addressed. Like we're gonna have people, like me, women like me that look like a man walking away, that are going to confuse people, because I'm so big and burly. I'm sure I'd confuse people sometimes depending on what I have on. But we're going to have people that are in that in between stage that aren't trying hard enough, but don't quite have the body builds to pull off kind of what they're going for, that are going to put people in a very confusing state where there is no good response to them. There's no right response, because anything you say is going to be deemed inappropriate. How are we going to handle this flood of legal issues if this is what America is going toward? And how are we going to justify that literally 70% of our court dates will be over misgendering someone? And that within 5 years, most of those findings, most of those, when the judge slaps the gavel, most of those will have to be reversed with a post conviction relief hearing, because that person will detransition and change back. So how do we turn something into law, that which we cannot even identify as honest or even a derivative of a true biological behavior? Because there is no way to prove the belief within a gender. There is no litmus test to prove this. So who should the burden be on? Well, I think if you want to pass as a woman, the burden should be on you to look like a woman. And if someone is still calling you sir, you probably need to try a little harder. I don't think, I mean, if it's like the pronouns, ze, them, or Somebody said a cat name or a unicorn or a rainbow, and I was just like, and you need to know my pronouns. And I was just like, how am I going to know your pronouns when they're fictitious little words you've dreamed up, and everyone can have their own pronouns? And how many, what, 100 and what, 350 million people in the United States, and I'm supposed to guess all of their fictitious pronouns? Are you flipping kidding me? Huh? And what happened to pronouns that just used to show ownership? Just show ownership. Show. Now it's turned into this, and it's like I used the word aspirations the other day, because aspirations are things. Yeah, this is how vocabulary gives us hints in life. Sometimes aspirations are normally things that you want to accomplish in life, things that make you happy, things that are going to make you feel successful, and that you found your way. But in the medical field, aspirations are things that go the wrong way. So sometimes, maybe we get a little hint, that we need to look at things longer to see which way it's going to go, before we try to jump on the bandwagon. I'm just like, how we're at the rate that this is growing, so just exponentially, it's just growing so fast. We are basically going to be walking through a society that is going to be at like 60% trans at the rate we're going. And how are we going to function? And if they put them on puberty blockers before a certain age, that means that their bodies will never mature, which means that more damage is being done to their body than if they were allowed to mature. And these people that have, and I'm sorry, this may be rude, this may be a little mature for our topic sometimes, but these people that have these big, these men that have these big sexual fantasies of being a woman and having the bottom surgery so that they can be a woman. If you put yourself on blockers before you reach puberty, you don't have enough flesh down there to create what you need to function sexually as a woman. So that's what a lot of these younger kids that have been put on blockers and then follow through with this have realized. They're dysfunctional, and they cannot enjoy that that portion of their life as an adult should be able to. So therefore, they're realizing this was not the greatest idea. We didn't think it all through. The doctors didn't have all the answers, and I certainly didn't, understand all the criteria and potential problems. And so we're seeing sadly, a lot of this population that they said, well, they'll unalive themselves if you don't allow them to transition. Well, they're still unaliving themselves. They have the largest percentage of that, because they're not maturing correctly, because number one, we're stopping their bodies from maturing. So they're getting no maturation, no hormones, and no growth of the organs that they're desiring to use at some point, whether they're augmented or not. And then, you know, they don't understand that, and they go through surgery to realize after surgery that they do not have the necessary skin and nerve structures, necessary to have an enjoyable adult life in that regard. But no one told them about that. And so they're still in this very unhappy place, and they have the largest percentage of, sadly, unaliving themselves. And no one wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to say, hey, yo, this is a problem. Perhaps we need to talk to these people about other things, about reality, before we allow them to augment their bodies and ruin any type of understanding that they may have about what is actually possible and not possible. And just the fact of the matter is that a lot of people are now, even people that are on Medicaid funded surgeries, they're paying for these things. Well, do you think a Medicaid person is going to get the best physician possible? Come on now. Yes or no? as opposed to someone who has private insurance and millions of dollars to spend to find a perfect plastic surgeon and somebody that's done thousands of these. Do you really think someone that's on Medicaid is going to get the top notch quality service that they would need going down this route? No, no, I know. No, 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 no. It's just no. So we just, understand your limitations. And instead of having, all these big dreams and aspirations, which sometimes go the wrong way, have somebody love you enough to sit down and have a realistic talk about expectations and explain what the healthy ones are and what the unhealthy ones are and what is truly possible and what is, socially plausible and what is cerebrally fictional, and those two can't coincide with each other. Normally what you think within your brain is rarely what occurs out in society, so be prepared for both of those, and that they're not going to meet your expectations. And I see no therapist preparing these people for any of these issues, and I think they should all have their licenses taken away and be prosecuted. I'm sorry for the typo. Have you seen some of the typos I make? My hands don't work half the time. I think it's medical malpractice too. I think it is. I think it is a financial um, gulp. I think they're wanting to get as much money before this trend becomes the non-trend, because enough people are going to realize that it is basically just butcher augmentation, and it just creates more problems. I think they're just trying to come up and just go up as much money as they can before it is, really spoken about accurately, and that it is a very expensive thing that should take years of therapy to progress toward, and it takes millions of dollars to maintain and sustain. And now we've got kids that are patients for life because their bodies can't function without certain medications or certain hormones, and that they have other issues now as well, because of the damage to nerve structures in certain areas. It's just it's sad. It's sad to see a 17, 18-year-old young lady, dealing with interstitial cystitis, which I have too because of my neuromuscular disorder. But she's dealing with it because of surgical flaws of a surgeon's ineptitude. I'm dealing with it because I have a nervous system that doesn't function. I don't have anyone to blame it on. It's just my body went on the fritz. But she has to deal with this. I mean, it's excruciating pain because of a surgeon that was stupid. And because no one had to talk with her about this being a possible outcome. And that was the young lady that talked with Jordan Peterson not too long ago. So it just makes me wonder if people are really caring. Like, when you say you care for this demographic, do you care enough to tell them the truth, even the ugly side of the truth? Do you care enough to tell them all? And it's just like, because if you don't, then, that's an issue as well. Oh, we've got a newbie, Justina, y'all. Yeah, I don't care what people want to be called. Like, if you want to be called, butterfly frou frou, hey, butterfly frou frou, how you doing today? I mean, it don't bother me at all. Um, but yeah, it's the minors, and harming their bodies before they reach any kind of maturation to function correctly beyond a surgical intervention later. Um, yeah, it's very, very scary that you're looking at when you do any kind of surgery on a minor or someone that you have put on blockers and their body has not matured, their organs have not matured, and then you're supposed to use those organs to create other orifices, but you don't have enough skin, you don't have enough nerve endings, and they're not going to function as they think they're going to function, and their fantasy is not going to come to fruition. And now we've got someone that not only has a, you know, dysphoric issue, now we've got someone that is depressed with a whole other, bunch of stuff fixing to occur. And I honestly think it's just about creating customers for life. I think it's about creating patients and customers for life. And I think that is evil. I think it's evil. And what we should do is, if you choose to do this, it should be after your body has matured, so that you understand the function of your body, you understand its functionality, and you're very aware of how that functionality may change. Because I'm sorry, but when you're, 12, 13, and you're putting yourself on hormone blockers, you don't know how your body is going to grow and function. Your body's not functioning at full capacity at that time. You don't have a clue. Let that body mature before you attempt to augment it, so that they have a functioning body before they augment it. That way they understand its function. So a lot of kids don't understand the function of their body, and they have this fantastical view that anything can be created. No, I'm sorry, not the way nature creates it. No, it cannot. Watch the talk with Camille Paglia. I think that may have been the one I watched with Jordan Peterson. It was fascinating. Um, part of me, part of me watched it and thought, because you were watching her, and you could see where she had several times had an indecisive moment, but because the doctors were so hesitant to talk her out of it, they just kept pushing forward. Because in Canada, if you say anything bad about it, you are just like the most hated person on the planet. You might as well have robbed a bank and killed people. So these doctors are not talking about the things that can go wrong, or saying, "Are you sure?" Because in Canada, to go against what someone believes, even if they're a minor child, is seen, as you harming them. Well, I think the harm comes in when you surgically augment their body without them understanding how their body is supposed to function at all. So, if this trips down to the States, we're starting to see it now with young men wanting to go into changing rooms, identifying as women, going into changing rooms. We're now seeing it backlash with Aaliyah is it Thompson or Thomas, the swimmer, whose dark history is coming out now. And we're starting to understand. A lot of people are starting to see stuff from more of a therapeutic look at things, because autogynephilia is becoming more of a spoken thing about how some people do this because they do get a sexual surge out of the portrayal. Um, and that was something that was kind of taboo to talk about for a long, long time. If you want to see a young man that is struggling with detransitioning and all the things that happen to his body, what is it? I think it's Isaac Uncooked, and you can just see that he's just very he's very, I could listen to his voice all day long. He's got a very beautiful voice, but you can just see the indecisiveness in everything that he does. And I'm like, is this a trait that happened after, pre or post, where you tried to transition? Because if you were this indecisive as a youth, there would have been no way as your parent I would have taken you and gone along with anything. Not at all. But he does now talk about the downfalls and what that society, the harms of it are, as experienced by him when he transitioned. And some of his stuff is hard to listen to. And sometimes it's hard to watch him when he's in crisis mode, and you can tell when he's in crisis mode. But he is very, very honest to a fault. And I will listen to him sometimes and cry, because nobody had the gonads to look at him and say, this is potentially not the best path for you. Not because you don't have an idea of who you want to be, but because you don't have an idea of who you are yet. And sometimes to change the statue needs to be finished first. And then we can change the statue. But a lot of kids don't understand that when they're at the age they're making these decisions. When did we start letting 12 and 13-year-olds make decisions about their bodies long term? I mean, hello, they can't even get a tattoo or pierce their belly button or nose without a parental sign off. I just it all is feeling wrong to me. But I will say that with the hormone blockers at that age, you basically your body never matures, so it never learns how to go through puberty. And many people, after all those years of hormone blockers, their bodies never learn. I mean, the reproductive act is never complete. So we're going to have a large swath of our population sterilized over fantasies created by 12-year-olds and parents that couldn't say no. I got no problem after you're 18. I would tell everybody your brain doesn't really mature. You don't really have that prefrontal cortex until you're about 22 to 25. But, and after you're 18, if you want to do something, your body should be mature enough. You should be able to make a decent decision. I would petition anyone that I was talking to wait until they're 22 to 25. Because number one, you want to have everything mature. You want to have all the skin possible for surgeries. You want to have all the nerve endings matured, so they have a lot to work with if you're going to change that, because you need extra as opposed to not enough. Let me tell you, that's one of the biggest problems with surgery. And that's one of the biggest reasons you should let that body mature if you're going to follow through with this, because that seems to be the biggest downfall, is that a lot of them are dysfunctional sexually after these surgeries, and that's why we have such a high unalive population within. It didn't work as the fantasy in their head said it would, and they become this person that they always thought they wanted to be, but they are still not satisfied. So it didn't fulfill any of the real core issues that they were wanting. Well, no, of course, at 12 or 13, you don't know what satisfaction is. And of course, if you augment your body to where it can't grow and it can't mature and the nerve endings don't grow and your sexual organs don't mature, of course, well, you're never going to know what satisfaction is. So these doctors that are hacking on children that are too young, I have a huge issue with. I have a huge issue with. Huge issue. Going to a baby shower where the parents want to wait to see what gender. Oh my goodness. Bless that baby's heart. Could you imagine growing up not having an identity? Even if it was one that you later chose to walk away from for whatever reason, could you imagine growing up without an identity? Can you imagine what that creates, the void that creates in that child's little life? It's not that you're open to play with all the toys, it's that nobody knows you well enough to know what you want to do. So you go through life with everybody swearing that they know you well enough to make your own decisions, but you look at those parents for guidance and hope and comfort, and you're not getting any of it because they're pushing you away, saying you need to choose. But when you're a tiny baby, you don't know that. You just are looking for comfort and guidance. And if you were truly dysphoric, the guidance you would still that would still present, later when you could talk and handle it for yourself. What it does with children is it creates a void. It creates this attachment issue. So they struggle to build attachments with others because their parents are struggling to build an attachment with them, because they want to leave everything wide open to be the child's choice. That is the most dangerous thing you can do with a child that needs you to role model every skill they need to survive in this world. And you're role modeling none because you want them to figure it out on their own. Well, that's great. Just put them in the gorilla cage at the zoo and let them figure it out on their own, because that's about what you're doing to your child. Children need guidance. They don't pop out and take care of themselves like baby sharks and baby snakes. They need guidance, and they need touch, they need comfort, they need sustenance, and they need guidance, because they do not pop out ready to take on the world around them. And can you imagine growing up and knowing nothing about yourself because no one wants to tell you anything about yourself because they want you to make that decision. But as a child, without any of the appropriate role modeling of skills or behaviors, you don't know how to do that, so you don't know who you are. Can you imagine the void that these kids live in? And they go, I've seen some in like in the preschool settings and stuff, and parents that raise them, and they go to school and they're like, do you like to play with trucks? Do you want to play in the sandbox? I don't know. And you'll say, well, that's a pretty shirt you wore today. Did you pick that out yourself? Uh-huh. Oh, do you like that color? That's a very pretty color. That's like a pastel purple. That's a very pretty color. Is that your favorite color? I don't know. So you pick up on a lot of these kids, that you see during counseling, and you ask these very simple questions, you're not trying to dig too deep. You're just trying to get a baseline. And they know nothing about themselves. They don't know what toys they like. They don't know that, and very rarely do they have friends, because friends are reassurance. But parents that are waiting for you to make all the decisions don't want you to have friends, because friends would sway you, because friends would reassure you that, oh, you like trucks? I like trucks. Let's go play with trucks. You must be a boy. But parents that are trying to create that void, they don't like that. So they often isolate that child, or they put that child in only adult controlled settings. And so these kids are missing a lot of the building blocks they need to become healthy young children that can navigate society, understand the good, the bad, the ugly, and handle it. And so we're creating, and I think that's why we have such a lengthy juvenile period in America now. We have no rites of passage, and we have an elongated juvenile period that lasts well into the 30s, because parents are acting like the children don't know who they are until they're 25. I don't know about y'all, but I raised two extremely wonderful children. They're young adults now. I knew exactly who they were going to be about age 5, 6, when their spatial awareness and the way that they facilitate with friendships starts to occur. They know exactly their personality traits. Pops right on out there, And there's been no huge deviation, mostly because I role modeled how to care for people, how to care for yourself, and gave them the skills to know that they were loved, and then they created their own little personalities. I didn't push them into any way, but I gave them the framework of comfort, love, and a safe, warm base, a safe, warm home base to come back to sit and think about things and go and attack the world again. But I never once took them out of a scenario or handled a scenario for them, because it's something they have to learn how to do on their own. And so I think that's why we have such a long juvenile period now in America, is these kids don't learn how to take care of themselves. Like, they're still 20 and they've never, they've never gone to have their oil changed in their car. They don't know how to pump their own gas. I mean, my God, when I was 21, I had 2 kids and a mortgage. The world is pretty self-explanatory if you live in the real one. And I think that's the biggest problem we have. Nobody's living in the real world anymore. And of course, I'm not counseling anymore, and I'm being just a rude little hillbilly with my little own perspective of this right now. But it concerns me greatly, because I have sat through so many court dates where I'm like, why did they do this? Why did they take this to court? This is a waste of our time. This is a waste of the judge's time. This could have been solved. And all I can envision now is we're going to have, 100 pleas every court date for people that have misgendered people, and it's going to make up over 50% of our judicial system is people misgendering others. And how is that going to handle, society? We're all going to be have misdemeanors or be convicted felons, depending on how they label it, because we saw somebody and thought it was her instead of he. Excuse me? It's like, my eyesight's not good on a great day, so I'm gonna have to be real careful. I'm gonna have to start asking for give me a card so that I know how to address you. I'm not gonna speak to you until you hand me a card with exactly how to address you. I mean, it's talk about a litigious community. And is that the motivation? Is because it seems like the biggest thing about this is the money that can be made off of the harm that is milked, the emotional hostage taking, the cash app. Oh my goodness, I hurt and I need to have this. I need to have my lips plumped because they say I don't look enough like a girl because my lips aren't plumped. If you could just cash at me $2, $10, whatever you have. People are making bankroll playing on people's emotions like this, and it's just sad. It's sad. It's very sad. But the thing is, when you see practitioners in 2 weeks putting people on hormone blockers, that is not a practitioner that needs to be practicing. If in 6 months they've got them aligned for surgery, there's no way they have gone through their past and looked at every other plausible possible issue to make sure that that dysphoria is the root cause of the maladjustment and the maladaptive behavior. It takes time to get to know a client. It takes time to get them to open up to you, and you have to go through and methodically talk to them to check off other issues that, if overlooked and you follow through with, a gender reassignment, could be amplified or worsened by the hormonal change. So that's another concern. So we're not really doing our part to do these people justice and to take care of them appropriately and to make sure that we're not worsening their life. And we're just going to have to be better to each other. Isn't that the whole thing? We're going to have to be better to each other. Don't even get me started on the Ohio train stuff. Oh my God. Let's see. Denise says high schooler, looks like female, all female traits. Facial hair, beard. I teenage boys and hormones, there should never, here's the thing. If you're going to be trans, there needs to be a separate a trans female and trans male changing area, because you should not subject biological females or biological males into the confusion. There should be a safe place for all. And I'm sorry, but if the whole justification of someone is their fight is no, I'm a girl and I want to change the girls' locker room, it probably not much of an issue there other than someone just wants to be in the girls' locker room. If you support them in every other way and give them a safe place to change on their own, and they understand that this is the trans female locker room, and then over there's a trans male locker room, and you're trying to appropriately give them their own space as you would everyone else, but their biggest issue is no, they want to change with the girls. I'm sorry, that's a red flag for me. It's a red flag for me. Especially like that one guy that went into they have a co-ed spa where little kids are not allowed in California, and then they have a male spa, and then they have a female spa, because in the female spa, especially for like a lot of the Asian or Korean women, it's like a bonding thing for them and their young girls, especially with the long hair and the rice milk and everything they do. So this trans gentleman, he was still a man, swore he was female. Instead of going into the co-ed spa where it was all adults and who would have subjected himself to no children, he walked straight into the women's, which had young girls. And I just am fully of the belief that there are certain sites young children do not need to see. And I grew up on a farm, and I still have that belief. There are certain things you don't need to see. There are certain questions that need to remain question marks, just so that you have a good, wholesome, healthy childhood. And they refused to do anything. Well, come to find out, it was in California, and this was actually a sex offender that, number one, was not supposed to be there, was violating his supervision by being there, and should have caught many new charges for being there. And but because they don't understand, we can't find the truth here. They did not punish him. um, mostly because it made national news and everybody was rallying for him. And I think that's sad because, they're worried about hurting one person, but look at the dozens of kids that were in there that, in a supposed to be a safe women's area, and, I'm not from a culture that does the communal bath thing, so I don't quite understand that, but I do know that in some areas it is kind of a more ritualistic thing, and it's how a lot of customs are taught to their young ladies. So parents were trying to put them in the safest place possible for that, and then this man that should have gone in the co-ed walked straight into the women's room. As far as cats and dogs, that's Denise. That's a good perspective on that. That's one I wouldn't have thought about. Yeah, they pick a gender neutral name, and then what if you ask me, they all they do is thoroughly confuse this child. Just thoroughly confuse this child, because what if you went 6 years with never knowing or never having an inclination from your parents of kind of which way you were to fall, because you're going to have an inclination in your mind, but your parents will not uphold that. They are fighting to keep a neutral foundation. So that means you're struggling constantly because you're being pulled back to a neutral base. Every time you have an inclination one way or the other, your parents are pulling you back to this neutral void. And so you never know who you are until it's too late to catch up on all the things you should have learned at that age. Little boys and little girls, they learn spatial awareness at different times. Little boys learn it earlier, little girls learn it later. Why? Because little girls hang on to apron strings and stay close to mom and dad. Little boys run them up. There are different age standards for learning things for each gender. And whether or not you think your child is one or the other, if they seem inclined to learn that skill, you should let them learn that skill without pulling them back because it's not the gender you think they need to be. Let them learn that skill. That skill is more important than what you think they're going to do with their private parts 20 years down the road. That skill is far more important. It's gonna impact them every day. But we have a lot of parents that are not thinking like that. Oh yeah, the women's sports, that Leah Thomas. Well, it's come out now that Leah Thomas actually is probably more of the autogynephilia than transgender. So if you don't know what that means, look it up. But basically, Leah gets a very big sexual rush from dressing as a woman, seeing other people flaunting in front of women. It's more of a yeah. It's not it's one of those things that we would probably put in the sex offender category in the legal books, um, and they're fudging the lines and getting away with it. But a lot of the stuff coming out now is not promising as far as this person doing all these things on the up and up. And of course, I can't make that determination. I've just seen the news, but that seems to be the consensus of what is being found online from their behavior. So it's I don't know. It's just I've sat here and wondered about this. Of course, when you're sick and laying in bed, you wonder about stuff. Um, I've been writing a big story on Cody's and Cody traits and the differences between Cody's and road dogs, and been interviewing people on the phone as I've been able to. But there have been some days I've just barely been able to just lay in bed. And today's been one of those days because this rain has really caused my pelvis and legs and the nerves in them to have a falling back. So I was doing much better, and then today has been a very uncomfortable day. But if this rain will move through, I'm sure I'll get back on track. But David's really wanting me to go with him to the fur buyer's sale Saturday, and I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to sit in the vehicle that long and have my pelvis jarred because it is still so sore. But I'm gonna see what I can do. And he likes to stay there all day because he's got several different things he wants to purchase, and I don't want to ruin the day for him. Yeah, Jenna. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine as a toddler, if you look at something and it gives you comfort, but your parent keeps taking it away? Can you imagine? Can you imagine the confusion, number one, but then the feeling of that comfort that you're not getting comfort or support from that parent. You're getting confusion and restrictions and consequences, which are needed as well, but that's all you're getting. You're not getting the comfort. It's just scary. It's just scary. But that's what I've been thinking about the last week. I've been like, okay, are we going to have a lot of lawsuits that come back when people detrans, and people can come back and sue them for fraudulent false reports and false imprisonment? I mean, depending on how America labels this and what level of crime they make this, um, are the misdemeanor, criminal, and civil courts going to be absolutely flooded? How is it going to affect our family courts? I mean, there's just a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions, and I don't think if anyone were to look at this long term, sure they're going to see a lot of money coming into the court systems and into each county, and sure it's going to be a moneymaker. But can you imagine what it's going to do to your society? That's my questions. Can you imagine what it's going to do to your society? Is the money it's going to make worth the detriment to your society? So that's my big concern. But that's where I've been thinking. Um, I've had several people message me about Ryan's last video, where he smashed up his truck and said, "This is what happens if you want to borrow my vehicles, or it's my truck, I'll beat it up." And I don't know. It's like he went back into fight or flight, back to his amygdala. In my county, if you destroy something, even if it's your property, if you like in my county in particular, there was a man that his wife made him mad, and it was his vehicle, his truck, and his tires, but he didn't want her to go somewhere, and so he shot the tires out on his truck, and he ended up having to have an evaluation done, and the cops picked him up, and because of the destruction of his own property, but also the threat that he was, um, to potentially anyone that could have stumbled across him at that time when he was, doing those behaviors. So, for me, if I could tell Ryan anything, I would say, listen, if you're at the point where someone's making you so mad that you're destroying your own property, they're still winning because they're still prompting behavior in you that is detrimental to you. Don't let them do that. Get out of your amygdala. Get out of your fight or flight mode. Find something that puts you back on the straight and thinking path, which is normally music. Sit down and play an instrument for 15-20 minutes. Calm down. Get your head out of that rush, and get it back into the thinking side, and don't allow people to dictate your emotions. Because they're still winning. If you allow people to dictate your emotions, they're still winning. So that's about all I've seen out of him. I don't like to see him do stuff like that because it's only hurting him. Um, but this family environment that he's handling, nobody truly knows what he's handling. So, I can just say from an external an external perspective of someone that used to work in both the corrections and the mental health field, is that is normally two things: the destruction of self property and the anger that you elicit while doing so. Those are two things that would normally lead you down a very dangerous path. And the fact that you are doing that because you're angry at someone else, but you're still being puppeted. You're being puppeteered by someone. Um, so whenever you want to destroy something, find something else to do that will calm you down for 5 to 10 minutes, and focus on something else, because that is just a very detrimental trait, and that is one that at what is he, about 31, 32, he needs to grow out of. So he needs to learn how to handle that form of expression in a more mature and positive manner, because otherwise he's just, people are just going to dictate his behavior by making him go aggressive, and that's something he's going to have to battle, and he's going to have to overcome it eventually. I don't understand, like, I don't understand why she's trying to um, combat and destroy what has given her such a good life. You can tell that the family has had problems. I mean, heck, let's just be truthful. Any redneck podunk family that has, had a troublesome time making ends meet, we all have problems. But I can't imagine what created the crossing of such lines, especially when he was so caring and devoted and open to taking care of everyone. Like, everyone. Tell me somebody else in his family that is, really earning a living, you know. I mean, he was housing everyone, taking care of everyone. Didn't have to do that. Did it out of the kindness of his heart, and had all of that shoved back in his face. I can understand why he's mad, but allowing the madness to take over and the aggressive side of him to take over it's going to justify their statements if it ever goes to court of how aggressive and um, dangerous he is. So that he needs to stop those behaviors, because it shows a very scary side that the court is going to lean on, saying, okay, yes, he's dangerous, and even though he's destroying his own crap, the court will say, yes, he's dangerous. I've seen it happen way too many times. So I would say, people are going to piss you off to get a reaction. Stop giving them the reactions. It doesn't matter if you're destroying your own shit. You're still being destructive, and the court's going to see that as animosity, anger, and things that you can't control, and they are going to not think you're conducive to society. So, be careful. It will put you in a bad place every time. It's a family in crisis, and as much as I try to have everybody look at all the different sides, you can see the dysfunction from a mile away, especially when I'm trying to say, listen, it's got to go to court. It's got to go to court. If somebody did something illegal, then it has to go to court. We can't just yell at them and seek satisfaction because we want to render a judgment. We can't do that. We have to let it go to court. And if somebody did something wrong, then, accountability will have to be met. They'll have to have their, moment of accountability in court. And, Ryan's never been anything but absolutely sweet to me. Miss Patty had never been anything but kind to me as well, until she lashed out because she didn't listen to any of my videos, but I guess she had a friend tell her what I was saying. And because I talk from every perspective, every side, because I want you to look at this from every side, because there's always so many ways to look at something. If you only listen to 3 to 5 minutes of my videos, you may only get one perspective when I may talk about 10 or 12. And I lay it out for you like that because as a society, we need to learn how to have a greater perspective so that we're less judgmental, so that we're more open-hearted, so that we don't seek justice on our own, but we're able to, stand back and see this from many avenues and say, okay, now that's going to have to go through court, or that's going to have to be taken through this. We are not the judge and jury. So if you only listen to part of my videos, I'm sure you only get one or two perspectives, and they may not be the ones that you want to hear. But you really have to listen to it all. But the fact that she didn't listen to any of my videos, but lashed out at me. I found that very juvenile and inappropriate, especially for someone who's older than me, especially for someone who should have every means to learn every skill and go through every therapeutic intervention to have made life perfection. I mean, she's had a pretty cushy decade or so, and I would surely hope that she would have used a lot of that to improve herself as a person. But I still saw a lot of juvenile behavior, and I've always tried to be supportive, because everybody sometimes matures in their own way. And I knew that she had talked several times about having dyslexia and having some other stuff that she struggled with. And so I, tried to just kind of meet you where you're at. And I enjoyed her thrifting and vintage content. And but the moment she didn't hear her, she couldn't tell me anything I'd said. But the moment she heard what I was supposedly supposed to be saying, she snapped bad. And I was like, okay, so she's mad at Ron for this behavior, but she's having the exact same behavior. And she's willing to cut me completely out, even though all I've ever been is positive and helpful and compassionate and caring. But she's willing to cut me out immediately, call me out. I received so much hate and horrible messages because of that one statement that she made to me under a video. And it just boggled my mind. And I thought, well, okay, now we know where these behaviors are learned, because, she was mad at Ryan for snapping and making a snap judgment. And well, now I understand where he learned the behavior. And so you can see that they're all struggling. And I hate to see any family struggle. But, if they're going to put it out on public domain, learn from it. Look at what's going on and say, gee, does my family have any of these red flags? Is this going on? Do I need to talk to somebody about this in my family? How can I make sure that me and my family don't ever end up here? If I'm starting to get famous, or I'm starting to make some money and I'm trying to take care of my parents, how do I protect myself from having this kind of issue down the road? It's a great learning tool. It's a great education tool. But you can't learn if you're emotionally stuck in it. And so that's why I ask everybody to step back. You're not the judge or jury, and just try to learn what you can so that you don't end up in a similar position. But it's sad because a lot of the fan base was being wielded almost as a weapon. And so that's kind of when I stepped away. But, somebody sent me a video the other day, and he's still destroying his own stuff. And I thought, what does that prove? That proves that somebody can incite you to violence that is only detrimental to yourself. And from a psychological standpoint, that's dangerous. Because normally we will hurt ourselves last. We will lash out at others first. So if you can be incited to violence to harm yourself or your own belongings, then 9 times out of 10 it means you can also be incited to violence to hurt someone else. And that's the way the judge is gonna look at it, because they normally have somebody evaluated if something like that goes to court anyway. So, I would just ask him to please stop destroying his own belongings when he feels that aggression building, to take a walk, do something that he enjoys, turn toward his music, turn toward his writing, call somebody that can calm him down, and learn how to handle that aggression in a much more effective manner so that it doesn't come out as physical. Or if you have to destroy something, go to those places where you can pay for like 1 hour and they give you a sledgehammer and a hazmat suit and glasses and you can go in and bust stuff up. Do that. Do that. Don't smash your own stuff. Find the legal, appropriate avenue to do it so that nobody can say you're lashing out, acting out, and you're scaring somebody. Because that's what it's going to be used as. Cindy, that's what the one video said, that they were trying to do a conservatorship, I guess kind of like Britney. And I think it's sad because when he's away from his family, this is just my perspective, this is just me. When he's away from his family on vacation, or he's out with the boys. He acts predominantly like any country boy that you'd ever see. Um, the very little bit that I've talked to him, it was like talking to my own kid. He's just a good old country boy. Um, he has issues with relationships that probably stems from familial epigenetic factors. Looks like that's a constant in the family, to be quite honest. Um, but it's also due to the fame and the way that fame makes people view you. He's going to have a hard row to hoe his entire life because of fame. Fame screws up every bond that you make with somebody because it's really hard to find people that will love you just because you're you rather than because you have a lot of money. And sadly, I'm afraid that somehow, rather than having 4 children and having and having one be blessed enough with a skill and a talent that became so well known that he was able to take care of the entire family, I would shut my mouth and be so happy that my kids were taken care of and my family was taken care of. Now, would I allow him to have bad behaviors? And no, I'd still be a mom to a certain extent until he got old, you know. But I would still be there to offer guidance, but I would be appreciative, and I certainly wouldn't be trying to screw anything up, and I wouldn't be shuffling money, and I wouldn't be doing things that, require sign offs and signatures, and I just can't imagine, for somebody that Ryan's heart is always open and his wallet's always open for people. I can't imagine why anybody would think they would have to steal. So this has just been a perplexing thing for me. But he does stuff that concerns me as well, and I talk about that. I don't give him a free for all. When he made that statement that he likes to use Adderall in the studio, well, Adderall is one of those things that can cause huge personality changes in your brain if you don't use it appropriately. And I was like, well, is he getting it prescribed? He has a valid reason to have it prescribed, but if he's getting it prescribed, is he using it correctly? Or is he only using it in the studio? Because for it to be used correctly and for your brain to really function correctly and have that therapeutic dose, you have to maintain that therapeutic dose, and it's normally a very small one at all times in your brain. And he was only using it at certain times to get the oomph, then that would be misuse. So that concerned me. But just like I said, that's between him and his doctor if he's getting it prescribed. And if it's not getting it prescribed, that's between him and somebody else when they catch him getting it from wherever he's getting it from. I don't know the circumstances around how he's acquiring that. It just concerns me because Adderall is a very beneficial. It's a very beneficial therapeutic dosage for someone that has ADHD and bipolar. They cross over and use it sometimes in bipolar people as well. But it provides a very much more normal existence for people that have ADD or ADHD or panic attacks and have a hard time focusing. Um, but when misused and you have the wrong amounts enter the bloodstream and cross over the blood-brain barrier into the brain, it can augment your personality and you can basically turn into a new person. And normally it's a hostile, angry person. And so that's something that concerns me as well. Now, do I know that that's occurring? Nope. No, that's just an idea for me because I dealt with so many people that struggle with that. That's just an idea, and that's something that I would like to put out there in hopes that if he's struggling in any way with anything like that, he would know that it's detrimental and it's going to make us lose the Ryan that we all love. So I hope that if he's listening to this, he thinks about how dangerous that is if that is something that he is doing. But I can't sit here and say with any knowledge that other than what those words that he said on that live. That's all I have but I have to think of every scenario and stress to people that listen to me that is very dangerous. Please talk to your doctors. If you have a child, a teenager, when they start to prescribe this stuff, or you're an adult that's been prescribed that, please talk to your doctor about misuse and how it can augment the brain and the personality. And be aware of how dangerous that drug is if it's not used in the correct therapeutic dosage. Please be very careful with that prescription. It's really good when used correctly and really dangerous when not. So, and again, I'm not a doctor. You need to go talk to your doctor. I'm not practicing anymore. I'm not billing insurance anymore. This is just a fat girl in Appalachia trying to tell you everything I learned from all the useless knowledge I still have crammed in my brain, even though my body gave out on me. So, I wish him well. I want to see him do well. I'm just not as invested as I was. I want to see him put out good music and I want to enjoy the music, but I just can't ride the roller coaster anymore. My health has just gotten to where I have to really control my environment and have positive days and do stuff that engages my mind in a positive way to where I feel like I'm making a positive change, doing positive things, because my health has been so bad here lately. I don't need to be negative. I don't need to have to deal with negative things, and I don't want to have to be in a negative headspace, especially for someone that doesn't remember I exist, you know, 11 months out of the year. Like I'm only pinged when I put out a good video, when he wants to share a video, or when he has a question. Like the last time he messaged me was a question about the Kylie Rodney case. So, I want to see him do well, but also he has all the money and all the skills and all the knowledge and I mean, he's an adult. He knows how to get himself help. So while I want to see him do well and I care for him, I can't sit here and worry about him because he can take care of himself. He has shown me he has the skills to do so at different times in his life. And so I'm going to sit here and go, either he wants to correct this or he's enjoying the ride he's on. And that's the two options. And I'm just not going to enjoy the ride because I just don't think it's not my game. But I want to see him do well. I don't wish him harm. And I really hate to see a family fall apart, and I hope that they find a way to come back together and love each other and have a new foundation of respect and build a new family unit that's better and stronger. Um, because money and things are not worth more than your family. But the disrespect has to be corrected. I will say that there's a lot of disrespect and a lot of miscommunication going on there, and it absolutely does need to be corrected. So, but I mean, it's as far as Ryan and what he's been to me, he's been perfect, sweet little country boy. I always call him little country boy. He reminds me a lot of my own son. He's a very sweet young man, super respectful, and I know he plays a persona a lot, but underneath that persona is a very sweet young man, and I want to see him do well. It's kind of like between the both of them, between him and Patty, who's going to do the most detrimental thing to themselves to prove a point? And it's like, how does that make sense? If you've got something that's making money, why would you shut it down trying to hurt someone else? Because you're just going to hurt yourself in the process. How about use mediation and come to an agreement and do what you should have done and set up parameters and safeties in the first place so that there's none of these arguments and so that you both can make your money and everybody not have to worry about this. It just is such a simple resolution of hire a mediator, hire a financial mediator, and get in there and put it all down in writing so that you know exactly how it is to be split and exactly where the power lies and exactly who has to be responsible for what so that the money goes where it's supposed to go without anybody being able to do any third party finagling and you both make money. What's the point of shutting something down? I'll show you. I'll break myself in the process. Well, I mean, there's no point to that. And that's one of those. If you get to the point where you're going to harm yourself to harm someone else, oh, I mean, the toxicity there is really bad. It's really bad. Yes, Cindy, it is. It's like a wreck. You don't want to look, but it's hard not to. And then when you look at the wreck, you're like, okay, well, how do I never end up in a wreck like that? Um, I see a lot of people go through a lot of bad things, and I'm like, how do I not ever end up in that? Um, and that's always the question I ask myself: is how do I avoid that? What led to that? And how do I avoid that? Because that's not anywhere I want to ever be. It's highly unlikely I'll ever be a rap star making millions of dollars. Sorry, can you see me? What would I be rapping about, y'all? Oh, little fat redheaded girl up there rapping about psychology. Um, I'm never going to be a rap star. But, if I was ever in a position to be financially well off and taking care of my family, I'm looking at this going, okay, this is definitely something I would have to pay more attention to here, 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 because I don't want this problem, that problem, that problem, and you just have to look at things and learn what instead of judging the people that are in there, try to learn what you can from their behaviors and the resolutions they're seeking and say, how would I handle that? How would it be best for me to handle it? And how do I never end up here so I potentially never have to handle it? And, if they're going to put it out on, if they're going to put it out on public domain, at least use it as an educational, warning. Rapping with Liz. We'll rap about making gnomes and hot glue guns. Oh, I'd be the cheesiest, the sorriest example. Oh my gosh, I would have turned into my grandmother. It has been a minute since I've been on. I've been very sick. I've been going through what they call a cytokine storm with my autoimmune issues, and it's called a cytokine release syndrome. If you've never heard of it, please look it up. It's spelled cytokine, Cytokine, and it's mostly reserved for people that are like having cancer treatment or are having a very bad autoimmune reaction to something, that's where I fall into. I had a very bad infection and abscess in my bowel that got into my pelvic bone and got my pelvic bone infected and inflamed, and my hip sockets. And it's been a very slow healing process, but my body was sending out all the cytokines to be like, that's your last army, that's your last ditch army they send out to go fix her up. But those little stupid things don't know what's bad and what's good, so they attack everything. And so my kidneys and bladder and bowels were being attacked, as well as the infection being attacked. And so it was hurting me just as much as it was helping me. And so I've had to be very still, do a lot of sleeping, a lot of flushing my body, a lot of not a lot of antibiotics, because antibiotics just kind of mess everything up. So basically what it is flushing the body and trying to get it back to a healthy state without aggravating it, because every time I aggravate it, it wants to release more of the little morons that attack everything. So if you've not ever looked at a cytokine release syndrome or a cytokine storm, check it out. It's very, very interesting. I have a very rare autoimmune disorder and called reflex sympathetic dystrophy, and I learn something every day because my body teaches me very hard lessons. So I'm taking a lot of histamines, hormonal blockers that block the production of these little suckers, and just trying to rest and not aggravate anything. So I have a very strange life. You won't remember that. It's a big issue for people that have autoimmune. I didn't know about it. So I went for a few weeks just thinking I had jarred my pelvis, and had I known about it, I would have caught it immediately. And of course, we started all this physical therapy and nursing at home and stuff. And it just so happened I had a little nurse who had dealt with a lot of cancer patients, and she talked the doctor into sending one of my blood samples in to be checked. And lo and behold, that's how we found out I had it. So I owe that nurse like a prize. So I don't have a gallbladder either, and yes, that does create a lot of issues. I cannot eat spicy food anymore, and I miss it. I miss spicy food a lot. So that was the first thing I lost after I had children, which is normal for women that have multiple children. The gallbladder is normally the first thing to go. So I was right on, right on point with that one. My gallbladder went 3 years after Haley was born. So, oh, I do have good news though. Get this. Now, my health is going to not allow me to travel. So I'm going to have to be there via, I guess, an iPad FaceTime. My daughter and her fiance set the wedding date. They were going to get married in November, but then my son they had their first baby, and they didn't want the baby traveling during the winter. And so they set their wedding date for March 24th. Of course, she's almost down to Florida. They're going to be having a ceremony out under the big trees with the Spanish moss hanging off of them. And I'm going to have to be there via flipping iPad FaceTime because I know I will not be healed well enough to travel at that time. But I'm hoping, since now we know what's been going on, this cytokine release syndrome could be something that's been causing me a lot of the issues since December. Y'all know how sick I've been since December. So if we can get this under control and get me back to level playing field, there's a possibility that I might even be better than I was like for like 4 years. Like I've been dealing with really weird stuff that potentially could have been this cytokine storm crap for a while now. So there's a possibility I'm going to be in a much better state. Now, am I going to be running marathons? No, but I might be able to drive myself to visit my daughter for a week and then, be an invalid in her house instead of invalid in my house, but still get to visit. So I'm hoping that if I work on my health a lot, then I'll be able to visit her at least twice a year. She's already got a guest room set up for me, and that way I can still visit her because she works in the vet field. She's a veterinary. She's in her last little bit of veterinary school, so she graduated from UT in May, and now she's down south trying to finish up the last of it. And so she's doing a lot of work in veterinary clinics and surgical clinics, and she doesn't get a lot of time off from work, and so it's very hard for her and her fiance to get time off together to get come all the way up here and visit. And so I want to be able to go visit her. And I've got plenty of friends that go with me. I just hate to drag somebody somewhere with me for a week, even though I know my friends would love to go and enjoy it too. I want my freedom back to go when I want to go and travel when I want to travel. And used to be give me a tank of gas and you know directions on my phone, and by golly, I'll get there. I don't mind to drive wherever 6 to 10 lanes through Atlanta. I'll get there. Um, but it's just my health has been, I get so weak and my legs have gotten so weak. And we think a lot of it is because of this cytokine crap now that we found out. So I might be better. I might be better. I might gain a little bit more energy and a little bit more, independence. Not going to be like, you know, able to do a whole lot, but I should be able to drive myself somewhere, then hibernate for a day, and then enjoy, a week to visit. Not going to be doing any, weekend trips. That would be too much on me. I would have to go somewhere and stay for at least a week so I could recoup and then drive back. But, I miss them. I miss her. She's, I raised terribly independent little turds. So they have just kind of scattered, but I'm proud of them. So I just miss her a lot. And she got a very sweet fiance. I already think of them as a married couple, bless their heart, because the moment I saw him, I knew that's who she was going to marry. And he's a very sweet young man, and he's got a very good family, and we all get along really well. So I want to have more of the ability to visit her because she misses us. So like we set up video calls so she can call and annoy us, and we can yell. We like to yell at each other, and I will get the dogs amped up through FaceTime, and get the dogs and her cat amped up through FaceTime, and have them like run into the house, and it drives her nuts. But I love to do it. And she's got a corgi and a lab, and she adopted the blood donor cat from one of the local vets when they had to retire him, and he's like 10 years old. So I like to get them all running through the house because they know my voice. They've just never met me. So I like to get them all amped up. But she showed me her dress the other day. She waited and got a very expensive dress on sale, and that's my girl. Of course, she's a size 2, so she can basically fit into anything. I don't know how I had such a beautiful young lady. But I opted to have her a fresh bouquet made locally so she could pick it up. But she decided she wanted to, because she is my child. She said, "No, I'm going to make my own. I'm going to go to what is it, Michael's and Hobby Lobby, is that the two?" And she said, "I'm going to make my own." And of course, I used to make bouquets for women locally, so she knows how to make them. She's my child. She can work a glue gun like none other. So she wants to make her own bouquet so she can put it behind glass, and keep it. So I'm gonna send her some money so she can, because those flowers are expensive. Those fake flowers are more expensive than real flowers. Oh, well, she's getting married on March the 24th. So that's hey, we're gonna share something. But yeah, they've put it for March the 24th. So I'm gonna be watching from the iPad. I'll be the one crying through technology. That will be me. But I'm very excited for them. It's the first time I met him. I was like, well, that's who she's gonna marry. Just I knew it. I was like, that's who she's gonna marry. And he's probably he's the sweetest. I don't think I could have picked a better one. He's the sweetest young man. So I think both of my kids picked well. I mean, they picked well suited for each other. Um, we were going through some growing pains. We're going through some growing pains on the other side of the family, but that's to be expected. As families grow and people recalibrate, it just takes a while to kind of recoup and get back on track. But I knew the moment met both of my kids' significant others the first time I looked at my husband both times and been like, well, that's who they're going to marry, and I nailed it both times. so so David, he can't get any time off from work really right now. They've got so many contracts going, and if I heal a lot between now and then, there's a possibility that me and Kim, y'all know Kim, she's my ride or die. We might jump on the road and go down. It's based on my health, but I prepped my daughter to have me there via iPad because I've told her she knows about my health. But if I can surprise her, I want to surprise her. Yeah, my oldest was born in '86. I was born in '78. Oh, you gave her up when she was 5. That a lot of people don't understand. That is one of the most selfless things that you can do if you do it for all the right reasons. That's one of the most selfless things you can do. Oh, I did mine and David's wedding. Oh, my mother made my dress because my mother's a seamstress. Of course, y'all know my mother quilts and sews, and she made my wedding dress. I made my own bouquet. We got married at the little log cabin church. I think it cost us $100 to rent it for the hour. Um, we decided to have the reception just at the family home, so we all did like a potluck. I literally think mine and David's wedding cost 180 to maybe $200. I was even there afterwards because the flower girls was Haley and my little niece, and I was even there cleaning up and vacuuming the floor before we left. I even cleaned up after my own wedding, but that's how it goes. But I'm excited for Haley's thing. Well, I hear David coming home, so I'm gonna get off here. But I wanted to say hi to let you know I'm still kicking. And if I feel good tomorrow, I'll try to do a live so that y'all can see I'm still here. I'm just very, very sore today. So let's see. I'll try to do an afternoon one tomorrow. I think I've got physical therapy at around 2 or 3, so I might do one before that. Oh, good. I'm glad you found her. I'm getting there, y'all. Just keep tossing up prayers. I'm getting there. Today's been a rough day, but I'm getting there. It's good to see y'all. I've missed yous. And we'll shoot for, if I can move better tomorrow, we'll shoot for a live in the afternoon. So maybe around 1:30 or so when David leaves for work, I can visit with him for a few minutes before my physical therapist gets here. So we'll try that for tomorrow, as long as I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm going to go and see if David wants a snack before he comes in and gets ready for bed. I'm going to go check and make sure he's got something to eat. So it was lovely to see you. I've missed you. And hopefully we'll get back to normal as soon as I get to feeling better. So I hope to see you tomorrow. Y'all have a good night.